This is LSAT PrepTest 138, Section 1, Passage 4. This is a comparative or dual passage. The topic is selective enforcement, when authorities pick and choose who to go after instead of applying the rules to everybody. Medium difficulty passage set. The passages aren't necessarily hard to read, but the relationship between them is easy to oversimplify, and that's where the points are in the questions. Now, Passage A is abstract legal theory. Passage B is a real-world news story. Your job is to figure out exactly how they talk to each other, not just do they agree or disagree, but where they overlap and where they split. Now, Passage A opens with a bold claim. Law enforcement agencies can basically nullify a law. They can kill it in practice just by choosing not to prosecute anybody under it. The author says this happens all the time and then explains why. Now, here is the reason. Laws are almost always over-inclusive, meaning they sweep in more people than the legislature actually wanted to punish. And that is unavoidable. You can't write a law that perfectly predicts every future situation because language is too blurry. Human behavior is too messy, and so the law ends up being too broad, and enforcement agencies fill the gap by deciding who actually deserves to get caught. Then the author introduces the fix of discretionary non-enforcement. In plain English, that means the agency just quietly chooses not to enforce the law against those who technically violated it but don't deserve punishment. And the author's pitch is that this solves over-inclusion without creating under-inclusion, meaning without accidentally opening loopholes that let guilty people escape. And in theory, that's a clean trade. Now, you want to slow down at the end of Passage A. That's the paragraph most students blow past, but it's the one that matters the most for the questions. The author admits that the agency picks its own cases, and that means enforcement could become random or unfair. The word you're going to see here is capricious, but the author pushes that concern aside. The argument is that legislative oversight, Congress watching over the agency, keeps things from going off the rails. Now, notice the phrasing here. The author doesn't say capricious enforcement never happens. The author says it doesn't appear to be the central tendency. So that's a hedge. And the questions you could bet are going to ask about that. Then Passage B drops you into a real situation. A newspaper reports that 231,000 water customers in one city are behind on their bills, some by months, some by decades. The city's plan is to selectively cut off water to a few wealthy homeowners to make an example of them and scare everybody else into paying. This is textbook selective enforcement. The city is not chasing all 231,000 people. They are handpicking targets from rich neighborhoods specifically because those people can't claim hardship. This is their strategy. But the author of Passage B doesn't like this approach. The author doesn't reject the city's right to do it, but they offer a better option. Just attach a lien to the property the way creditors and tax authorities already do. The debt follows the house. When it sells, the city gets paid. No need for water shutoffs, no public shaming. Credit pressure does the work. And then comes the twist. There is a legal loophole blocking that solution. Water charges aren't classified as taxes, and under the current law, only tax debts can become liens. So the author's real argument lands at the very end. Change the law, reclassify the debt, fix the loophole. The author says this is smarter than shutting off people's water. So here's how these two passages basically relate. Passage A builds the case that selective enforcement is legitimate and an even necessary tool. Passage B shows that tool in action and argues this particular case calls for a systemic fix instead. And they are not opposites. That is the trap here. Passage B's author never says selective enforcement is always wrong. They say it's the wrong choice because a structural solution exists. And so if you walk into the questions thinking these passages are a clean agree disagree, you're going to pick wrong answers. The real dynamic is narrower. Passage A defends discretionary enforcement in general, and Passage B's author would rather remove the need for discretion entirely and redesign the system so it handles the problem automatically. Now, the key move across both passages is this. Passage A says selective enforcement fixes a flaw in how laws are written. Passage B shows a case where fixing the law itself is the better answer. One treats discretion as the solution, the other treats discretion as the workaround you shouldn't need. Before you hit the questions, you want to check yourself on these three things. First, what does over-inclusive mean in Passage A, and why does the author think it's unavoidable? Second, why does the Passage B author reject water shutoffs when a lien system would work? And third, what is the one legal technicality stopping the lien approach from being used right now?